Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Those who come late, they're late. I can't do anything about that. All right, let me explain a little bit what we're here for and why. First of all, my name is Scott Harris. I'm the pastor here at Grace Bible Church. Why are we doing this seminar? Part of it is because it's simply been a burden on my own heart. My wife and I homeschooled all three of our sons. They're now in their early 30s and late 20s. So it was a while ago that we did this. And we know that in the last year and a half, there's been a lot of pressure on what's been going on in the public schools. And so there's become a lot of interest in homeschooling. We can recall back when we first started, it was pretty scary. What are we going to do? How are you going to do it? Well, I'm here to encourage you that a lot more has been made available now than back then. It's not that hard. We want to encourage you that you can do this. If that's your desire, we want to give you some options. And so I'm just going to start off with why homeschool? Let me begin with just an extremely brief history. The tendency for us is to think things are always the way they are currently, and they weren't. Homeschooling is actually the normal way it's been done throughout history because the responsibilities belong to the parents. And no one was paying teachers unless you're very wealthy. So generally the boys learned the trade of their father. The mother taught their daughters how to run a home, and that's simply the way it was done throughout history. And that includes here in the United States. Now, if you had a lot of money, you could hire a tutor. And so that was done a lot. Or you might have a specialty school. You might have your child apprentice in a trade. That was common. Religious-based schools really got going after the invention of the printing press, because now for churches, it was very important that the people, now that the Bible was actually available in a relatively inexpensive form for the printing press, to be able to read it. So they got very involved in how do we teach our congregants to be able to read the scriptures for themselves. So that was the next thing, and generally the church would pick up a lot of the cost of it. Now, in the United States, government schools really got going after the passing of the Constitution. And the reason for that is because in order for our democratic republic to function, you had to have an educated populace. So it became very concerned for government to how do we educate the population. It took a while for things to get going. In the late 1780s, there were several publicly free schools, publicly funded. They weren't free. I think most of you pay taxes. You realize that it's not free. It's expensive. But they got going in the 1780s in the Northeast. The concept of a public education really didn't take on a wider scale until the 1830s, when about 55% of the children ages 5 to 14 were in public schools. That rose to 78% by 1870, so you can see an expansion. Now, those public schools varied greatly. A lot of them were one-room schoolhouses. Often it was the church in the community that hosted it. In 1910, about 14% of the population 25 and older graduated high school. That's it. We kind of think that's normal. Well, it has become normal now. By 1970, it was 55%. By 2017, it's now 90%. So education is something that's just become more and more prevalent. But the idea of public education actually is fairly recent. Now, in the United States, the parental responsibility has still been important. That's because we were founded on Christian principles. The Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4-9, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. These words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontals on your forehead. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. This was very important to the Jewish community and to the Christian community. This was a parental responsibility. Psalm 78:4-7 talks about the generational education. We will not conceal them from our children, but tell to the generation to come the praises of the Lord, his strength and his wondrous works that he has done. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should teach them to their children, that the generation to come might know, even the children yet to be born, that they may arise and tell them to their children, that they should put forth their confidence in God, not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. Again, this is foundational to our own nation. Parental responsibility, then Ephesians 6:4, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. So even to this day, though the government has an interest in public education, in the United States, it is still up to the parents to decide how the children will be educated. That's not true in other nations. In other nations, the child is seen as, I try to put it nicely here, property of the state. The state's responsible, you just get to pay the bills. But in the United States, it's different. So this is something that is your choice on how your children are educated. The state does have interest in certain things that they are educated in, and so there are mandates they've given on subject matter that has to be covered, but it's up to you, however you want to do it. It's up to you. Now, let me go some pros and cons of the different schooling options. Public schools, there are some pros to it. One, it's relatively inexpensive because you already paid your taxes. So we'll just say there's not extra expenses other than extracurricular fees and things like that, clothing. They're usually larger, so there's availability of things like team sports or specialized teachers in certain subjects, science, music, arts, things like that, that a lot of times, if you're just doing it by yourself, you may not have that ability. And it also enables parents to work, pursue other interests, because the children are being watched by somebody else for 7 hours or more a day. The cons, well, quality of education varies a lot from school to school and district to district. It could be good, it could be really bad. Instruction is given at the same pace for all students. That's a simple factor of logistics. How do you teach a group of 20, 30 or more children at the same time? Well, they're all paced. If a child falls behind, the teacher might be able to give them a little extra time here, or you can hire a tutor or something. But also those who are more advanced. A good teacher might give them an extra assignment or something, but you're still kind of held to, we're all at the same pace. Something that has increased in the last few decades is the adversarial relationship of teachers and the school to parental authority. My middle son is a teacher in the Poughkeepsie School District, so he's aware of how they've been trained, but it becomes, yeah, we've got our masters, we know more than your parents. That's not good. The children are your responsibility, and teachers should see themselves as your assistants to help you in fulfilling that responsibility. Along with that becomes more indoctrination to ideas that are contrary to the parents. We have seen a lot of that coming up. Loudoun County, Virginia is certainly the hallmark of what's going on currently, as the school district is mandating all sorts of things for these children to learn contrary to what the parents desire. Some of that is very bad. It's contrary to logic, it's contrary to reality, but that's what's being pushed. Another is the peer relationships. In a public school, your child is with peers. They're all the same age. Well, that means they're all with people of the same maturity level. And if they're all the same maturity level, don't be surprised if they all act immature. In fact, since there's usually some leader in there that's even a little more immature, the other kids will follow the less mature. That's not necessarily healthy. In fact, in our view, it's kind of detrimental, and I'll explain more about that when I get to homeschooling and its advantage here. If your kids are being trained by somebody else, you as the parent still are responsible to make sure you're monitoring what they're learning. And a lot of times that means when they get home, they don't only have their homework, you have to redo whatever they're learning to make sure they're learning what they should be learning. Sometimes it's correcting stuff that they shouldn't have learned, and you got to do that too. So you may not be necessarily avoiding the responsibilities by someone else doing it. So that's a negative. And then, of course, since COVID-19, we've started realizing, yes, there's broad exposure to communicable diseases and detrimental government mandates, and it goes both directions. It's just some fact of life. You got more people, small space, the kids pass things around. That becomes your decision, though. What are you going to do? With government mandates, are they necessarily looking out for the best interests of your child? I will be very direct on this. My own background is science. I'm married to a public health nurse. Masks for little children is not healthy. Period. It's just not. Has anybody seen that study that went down in Florida a few months ago where they actually analyzed what's on the inside of a mask after a child's worn it for a day? It's pretty disgusting. Not just disgusting, dangerous. And yet, that's what's being mandated under the guise of it's going to be healthy for them. It's not. And they're not even at risk for this. That's a problem. And so a lot of parents are starting to make noise about it. Okay? So those are some cons. Now, private school has some pros. A lot of them are the same as a public school. It enables the parents to work, someone else is watching the kids. You can have specialized teachers for certain subjects, though it may not be as much as in public schools. You have availability of some team sports, specialized things like that. The moral standards are usually higher than in a public school because if you're not cooperating with them, they say, well, then leave. So they kick you out. So there's some pros there, but cons are there too. Tuition can be expensive. I did check websites for 3 local Christian schools, and they're running $6,000 to $8,000. You get into some of the secular schools, and it can be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year for grammar school. It just depends on which school you're looking at. So there's a cost. Again, quality education can vary. It could be excellent, it could be poor. You have to make sure you check out what that's going to be if it's going to be in a private school. You also still have the influence of other students, which can be very negative, especially if the school doesn't enforce their standards. Again, instruction tends to be given at the same pace. All children are moving at the same pace throughout whatever they're being taught. You still have the responsibility to monitor what is going on with your child. What are they learning? What are they not learning? What should they be learning? Correcting some things. And again, you still have the broad exposure to communicable diseases and possible detrimental government mandates. Though I will say this, because I've done some chapels at local Christian schools, they tend to be more innovative. And the local Christian schools that I've done chapels on, they managed to stay open when the public schools shut down. So there's some advantages there too. But let's talk about homeschooling. Well, there are some cons. There is expense because you're going to have to buy curriculum. You may have other things you're going to have to get into, and our other seminar speakers will get into some of that. But the cost range varies a lot depending on what you decide to do. From nearly nothing, I asked at our seminar yesterday, one of the moms that says, we're maybe about $100 or $200 a year because, well, they're down to the 5th kid and they already have all those books. Some of the other ones, well, they might be spending $1,000, $2,000 depending on what they're doing. You get to decide that. How much can you put into it? But there's a wide range of opportunities there for the expenses. A lot depends on the resourcefulness of the family and what support's available. You are going to have to spend hours teaching the children, so you can't be off doing other things. You got a responsibility with them. You may lack expertise in something. So you might feel, well, how am my child going to learn this if I don't know it? Well, I'll show you how you overcome that too. Then you have to do some work to find alternatives. Your kids are interested in sports, you got to do the work in finding sports teams they can join in, town leagues, private leagues, things like that, or any kind of specialty. Same with specialty subjects. Now let's talk about the pros. A lot less expensive than private school. The next one is extremely important. The education of your child is tailored to your child by you who knows your child best. One of our speakers is going to talk about learning styles and what that is, how you figure that out, but you can train your child according to how they're going to learn best. Just a quick thing in my own family, I have 3 sons. The first 2 were fairly academic. The oldest one has 2 masters and is an entrepreneur. The middle one has 1 master's and he is teaching the Poughkeepsie School District. The third one, he's hands. He does not like academics, so it was a bit of a challenge for us, especially since he's also learning disabled. He didn't think the same way as most kids, especially the older 2. So we got to him as like, what are we going to do? Well, we had to figure out, but we had lots of help to understand how he learned, and as we understood that, we were able to help him. So he's now nearly 28. He works for Global Foundries in their chemical waste department, which is pretty serious business. And he makes more money than the other two. But he loves working with his hands. We were able to tailor his education to him as well as the others for what they wanted. One of the things that's common among homeschoolers is someone will ask, well, what grades are your kids in? And you go, what subject are you talking about? Because if they're interested, you can tailor it. They can be way advanced. My middle boy was doing the high school and then college text and history of his older brother because he loves history. And that was one of the first things he was teaching was history. He just loves it. He went ahead. He didn't like math. So he was on grade for math for his age, but he didn't like it. We were able to take more time with that. You can do that. You can't do that in a public school, but you can do it when it's your child, and you can tailor to him for that. If you have a child prodigy, why would you want to hold him back? If your child's learning disabled, don't you want your child to be able to reach the maximum potential of whatever that is? May not match other kids, but his maximum potential. We had our youngest one evaluated twice by the local school district. They were cooperative of that in 5th grade and in 10th grade. And both times they told us, keep homeschooling them. We appreciate the honest assessment. They said, we cannot do for him what you're already doing at home. There was an advantage. Basically, he had a private tutor. The second thing that to me is huge in homeschooling is you are training your child's character, not somebody else. This is the basis for a really successful life anyways. It's character. Even something as simple as you have that toddler and they're learning to, draw with a crayon. It's character that helps them understand how to keep it within the lines because that takes self-control and they have to sit in their seat. That's all character development. You get to do that, rather than someone else trying to instill into them something opposite of what you believe. It becomes your responsibility and your privilege, and it is a privilege. When we had problems, we were able to adjust to it and deal with it immediately. That's just part of it. Training your character. Later on in life, it's character that makes the difference between being successful or not. My youngest son, though he's had some learning disabilities, we trained his character. His character got him job after job after job. And he always had someone who would recommend him. His bosses always said, we'll recommend him. And that's why he kept working up the scale and getting better and better jobs. He's a hard-working, diligent young man. And so they want him. That's character. It wasn't his academic potential, it was his character. And so he's done very well. A fourth thing that's actually a great blessing is a flexible schedule. Now, in public schools or even a private school, if it snows, what happens? It's a snow day, the kids are stuck at home, right? Well, in homeschooling, it's a snow day, it's like, I'm already at home. We're going to keep schooling today. And tomorrow when it's nice and sunny, how about if we go skiing? Or we'll go play in the snow. So you get to choose what you're doing when. You want to take a vacation off season when it's cheaper, not crowded, you can do that when you're homeschooling. Whatever it is, if they're sick, but not sick enough to keep them from working, they can work while they're sick. Now the days that are available to them later, they can do something that they would like to do. It's a flexible schedule, it's huge. Socialization, another advantage for homeschooling. You get to pick who they're socializing with. You get to pick which families are supportive of what you're trying to do. Even more important, they interact more with children who are older as well as younger. So for some, they're being mentored by children who are more mature, and they're mentoring children who are younger. And so your child actually matures at a faster rate. Now, if you have more than a couple kids, you probably recognize the youngest one is always learning from the oldest one. My second one decided he'd learn quickly from the oldest one. When he got in trouble, he paid attention so he wouldn't do the same thing. It was good for us as parents. So it's the same thing. You get to choose. And so socialization actually is better in homeschooling than it is in the public schools because who they're interacting with is more supportive of what you're trying to train them. And then finally, there's less exposure to communicable diseases and detrimental government mandates. It lets you determine what risks you want to take with your child. You get to figure out, is this worth it or is it not? Should I be more protective? If you have a child who's susceptible to more diseases or catching things, sickly, you can be more protective. If you got one that's healthy and robust, well, you can have them take more risk. You get to decide that as a parent, not a bureaucrat. So those are some pros and cons, and you can see I'm very pro homeschooling. I don't think there is a better option myself, but I am biased because that's how we raised all three of our sons. Now we want to help you through the rest of this evening understand how easy it actually can be and the advantages. So the next seminar is going to be Denise Mazie. Denise is a homeschooling veteran. That means she's done homeschooling. Her two daughters she did in high school. She's also a teacher at the Culinary Institute of America. She wants to talk to you about learning styles. Denise. I'll lower it slightly.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pastor Harris, and thank you, Diane Harris, for inviting me here. I attend the Grace Bible Church, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here this evening talking to all of you a little bit about my homeschool experience, but then also talking to you about learning styles, because when you are teaching your children at home, I think one of the greatest anxieties that a parent has is, oh my goodness, am I serving my child well? Do I know enough? Do I know enough about how they learn? And am I maximizing this opportunity for them? So in talking about learning styles, the hardest thing for me is to be at this podium, I gotta tell you. So I like to be right down there. But I'd like to just engage in a little activity right now. So I'm gonna ask everybody, please stand up. Okay. And I'd like everybody to pair off, okay, with somebody that you did not come in to the program with. So someone that you don't know. Okay, so take a moment, please do that. Okay. Okay. And is there anybody without somebody? Okay. Okay. All right, you're a lively bunch. Is there anyone who has not paired off? Is everybody paired off? Okay, great. All right, we're going to decide very quickly. Okay, one of you is an apple and one of you is an orange. So decide very quickly. Who's the apple and who's the orange? Okay, apples, I want you to make a fist. Please make a fist. Okay, and then oranges. You have 7 seconds to get that fist open. Go. Time is up. Time's up. That's it. Okay. Back to your seats. Back to your seats, please. Okay. So, oranges, you were to get the fist open. How many oranges were successful in getting the fist open? 1, 2. Oh, hold your hands high. 3, 4. Okay, just a moment. How did you get the fist open, sir?
First, I pried her hand open, but then I asked her if she was
Oh, we got to dial that back a little bit. So first, you imposed your will and your physical strength and perhaps a little bit of intimidation. Okay. Now, why did you have to ask if you used all those other tactics?
Because I was thinking while I was doing it, I should have just asked her.
There you go. Well, my question to everybody would be, to those that were not able to get the fist open, did it occur to anybody to just ask nicely? Right? No? Not necessarily. All right, so we had a little bit of both right there. And then I saw your hand up, excuse me for pointing, right in the middle there. How did you successfully open the fist?
Well, I felt very strange trying to pry her hand open, so then I just asked her to open her hand.
Oh, okay, just asked her to open her hand. She felt a little strange. And now, so the apple in that scenario, how did you feel on the receiving end of that?
It was kind of funny because she was like nervous to come forward.
All right, so you were very perceptive in understanding that, hey, she's a little nervous. So, all right.
Yeah, and then she just asked.
She asked, and then why did you comply?
Okay, since you asked nicely, I'll open it.
There you go. You asked nicely, you'll open it. All right, then I saw some hands over here. Pastor Harris?
So, friend. Hi, can you please open your hand?
Okay, and you said no problem, right? So it's just and then you shook hands. This is a friendly exchange. All right, so what do you guys think this has to do with identifying learning styles? Anybody? No? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Yes?
Asking the person that you're asking to do something, to do it.
Yeah, just simply asking the question, but simply asking for the information that you're trying, or asking for the action in this case, that you're trying to successfully accomplish. Okay, so when you are trying to discover a learning style for either a student or especially for your child, okay, it's very important that you're involved by observing. Okay, by observing their actions, by observing how they learn in order to identify which one of these kind of styles they fall into. So that activity was just a little bit of fun to be able to remind everybody, number one, don't check your common sense at the door, okay? And number two, don't check your manners at the door either, okay? And number three, don't be afraid to just ask, okay? And you're going to get some kind of a reaction in return. Okay, and in that asking, there's all kinds of perceptions on the other side. The person that you're trying to get the information from, they're holding on to that information that you're trying to discover. Okay, so in deciding or discovering learning styles, I did some reading to be able to share with you some good information about that. And depending on whom you ask or what source you use, there can be anywhere from 3, 4, or even 5 learning styles, and it could probably go on. Okay, so what I learned from that, as I did reading about this, is that learning styles are a very inexact science. Okay, that's really not a science at all. Okay, but it's an understanding of how people process information, really. Okay, so we're going to talk about these 3, 4, and 5 different styles. I'm going to identify the 5, and then very naturally you'll see how the list is 4 for some people and then 3 for others. Okay, so just very quickly, and none of this is really going to come as a surprise to anybody, is that first, the first category among all of the sources I read was that certainly students learn by seeing. Okay, so there's the visual learner, okay, the visual. Okay, the second is the auditory learner, the one who learns by listening, by hearing. Okay, and then there's the tactile learner, who's the one that learns by doing, using their hands. And then there is the kinesthetic learner. Did I say it right that time? I think last time I didn't, but anyway. The kinesthetic learner is the one who's submerged in the experience. Okay? And then the 5th style is just what is really kind of loosely called the traditional learner, and that is a learner that just learns by reading and writing. Okay, so it's very traditional, and certainly doesn't come as a big surprise to anybody. Okay, so for those that believe that there are 3 styles, it's the first, the seeing, the hearing, and then it's the tactile and the kinesthetic together to just be 3. Okay, and then there's 4, as I just mentioned, and then the 5th one. All right, so I want to back up the truck real quickly, talk about each one of those individually. The visual learner is a learner who observes what's going on in the learning experience. That's the person that pays attention to the facial expression, the body language, the experience that they're having, the visual experience, okay, of learning. And some students really respond well to that. Okay, this second kind of learner, that auditory learner, is the one that not just learns by listening, but actually really learns through discussion. That's the kind of learner that really needs to talk through the information that's shared with them. Okay, that's someone who's very much an auditory learner, speaking, listening, and reiterating. Okay, then that tactile learner is the one, as I mentioned, is the one that works with their hands. Now, and goes very neatly with the kinesthetic learner, which is the learner that submerges themselves into the experience of the learning so that they certainly gain the most that they feel that they can. I want to just share a little story with you about my kids in regard to the first 2, the visual and the auditory learners. And then I'm going to share a little information with you about what I experienced teaching students at the Culinary Institute of America. And you can probably guess which category they fall into in terms of their learning style. But I have 2 children, as Pastor Harris mentioned. Thank you very much. My 2 daughters, Madeline and Ainsley. They are both in college now. They were homeschooled through high school, and for my older daughter, Madeline, all the way through high school. For Ainsley, part of junior high and all of high school. And when they were very young, they went through the public school system, And I was working full-time. I dreamed about homeschooling, but of course it didn't happen until later. But anyway, the story is this, that when the girls would come home from school, okay, they would come home from school to a babysitter who was usually someone, kind of a tutor of sorts from SUNY New Paltz, because I've lived in New Paltz, and I always reached out to the college because I thought that's a good resource for a babysitter, is a college student. And the college student would welcome them home, and then Madeline, typically the older one, would call me and let me know that they got home safely. Okay, that was our little just routine. And then Ainsley, when she got to be old enough, 5, 6 years old, okay, she got to make the phone call, which was, of course, extremely exciting for Ainsley. Okay, the first time that she made the call, however, I was in a meeting and I didn't even get to pick up the call. But she left a message, and I'm telling you that message is still on my phone today. Okay, I can recite it and to absolutely how she left this message. And this is what she said. She said, "Hi, Mommy, this is Ainsley. I'm leaving a message. If you see the message," and then she went on to leave the rest of the detail. And I played that when I got home on speaker for both girls so they could hear Ainsley's voice, because they always heard Madeline's voice. And there it went again. "Hi, Mommy, this is Ainsley. I'm leaving a message. If you see the message." And then Madeline cut right in and said, "Ainsley, you don't see a message. You hear a message." And then Ainsley said, "Well, Madeline, you can't hear a message unless you see that you have a message." So this is how they communicated, going back and forth. But anyway, and I thought, wow, you really told me a lot about my children, because I knew that Ainsley was much more of a visual learner, and Madeline is much more of an auditory learner. And it just shows you that it comes out in all sorts of different ways. Okay, the students that I teach at the culinary, okay, on the other hand, they're very tactile learners. They're very hands-on learners. In fact, many of the students that I teach, and I teach several different courses in business management. The first course that I teach them is Professionalism and Life Skills, and it is one of the first academic classes that they take. And I give them several assessments so that they can identify what type of a learner they are in a classroom, an academic classroom, because we know what kind of learner they are, you know, in a kitchen classroom, okay? But when it's not hands-on, they need to learn a little more about themselves. So they get assessed, and then they take the results of several assessments, and they reflect on the outcomes of all of those assessments together so that they can best understand how they can learn and, you know, learn new things quickly and master them quickly. Okay? But many of them feel very, very intimidated in the academic environment, because when they went through, most of them, public school, okay, they were just kind of put in a box of, okay, you don't perform well academically in the way that we're trying to teach you, so because you don't perform well academically, you're kind of a loser. And that's how they feel when they come to the world's premier culinary institution. And I'm telling you, when they arrive, they come to life. You put those students in a kitchen classroom, because that's what they're good at, that's what they do, that's what sets their heart on fire. They come to life, and it is so exciting to witness. Okay. However, in teaching business management, I still have to teach them in the academic environment, okay, because they have to, you know, they have to perform in the academic environment if they're going to have businesses in the future. Okay, so that brings me kind of to my next point, which is about motivation. So once you understand what the learning strategy is, okay, or what the learning type is for your child, okay, you want to create an environment, of course, where they can do the best work. And we think of motivation. We think, oh, wow, what am I going to do to create an environment where I can motivate my child, etc. I want to let you know, first of all, you cannot motivate them, okay? Motivation is internal and is very personal, and is pretty much different for everybody. The best you can do as a parent is unlock the motivation that is within your child, okay? It's going to come from within them. And let me remind you all that motivation, it's an emotion. Okay, motivation is an emotion, and it's going to let you down. Okay, how many of you have ever thought, gosh, I just don't have the motivation to clean my house today? I feel that all the time, okay, because motivation, it's never there when I need it, okay? So what I try to teach my students and my children is that they need more than motivation. They need discipline. Discipline is not motivation. Discipline is a driver. Discipline is what will get your child to the finish line in their studies. Okay, it's great for you to identify their learning style, okay, because then you can put up the guideposts and let them run freely in their learning. But do not be manipulated, okay, that because something, a concept or a task, something has to come at them, okay, where it doesn't fit their learning style, sometimes they just have to buckle down and do it. That's discipline. Okay, in the words of Mike Tyson, discipline, okay, is doing something that you hate as though it is something that you love. Okay, so discipline in your child is going to help you, certainly get them to perform to their highest level. So I kind of lost my train of thought there a little bit when I was talking about CIA students and motivation and discipline. I do want to share with you a little quote from Ben Franklin that I think is very relevant too. And Ben Franklin says, if you tell me something, I'll forget it. Okay? If you teach me something, I might remember it. Okay? But if you involve me in something, I'm going to learn. Okay? And that's what you want to do with your children, is involve them as much as you can. Okay? Understanding that sometimes they're going to have to do what they don't want to do. Okay? But once you can unlock their motivation and identify their learning style, you're going to be far better equipped as a parent teaching at home. And I've got to tell you, I could cry right now, and I might. There's no better experience than I had with my children than making that decision that although sacrifice needed to be made, they were going to be homeschooled for high school. And I thank God for the opportunity. I was able to do that through Liberty University Online Academy. It is an online program, and I just wanted to just say a couple things about that. Public schools went online last year. That was not online education. That was a failed public school system, right? Failing even more miserably by trying to pretend that they were doing something online. Right? Liberty University Online Academy is an accredited online program. They know what they're doing. And I have talked personally with the curriculum developers. I have tremendous confidence in what they've developed, and my children had a remarkably positive experience with that program. Also, another benefit of that program, I'm giving a little plug, I hope that's all right, is that both of my children were able to accomplish 2 years of college before they graduated high school. Their junior and senior years of high school, they took accredited college courses, okay? And they started their college career as entering juniors, which was a tremendous savings to me, okay? And for one of them, not the other, and I'll tell you why in a second. But tremendous savings, but also just got a lot of the gen eds out of the way. Those college courses counted both for high school credit and for college credit, so they were called dual enrollment courses. These are not AP classes. Okay, AP classes last the entire academic year, and it's my understanding that they might count as college credit and they might not. Okay, so, but these courses that my children took were dual enrollment, and they actually absolutely got the benefit of learning, and they got the benefit of college credit for that. Ainsley, my younger daughter, is going to graduate before her older sister Madeline. She's thrilled. Okay. She's going to graduate this May. She'll have a business degree from Liberty University. And Madeline, who's also thrilled about school, the advantage to Madeline for getting all of her general education out of the way is that she's actually a nursing student. And it's very, very competitive to get into a nursing program, and it's very rigorous to maintain your your studies throughout a nursing program. So the advantage for Madeline was that, again, her general education courses were out of the way. She could focus just on the science, which is what she loves, and she's having a tremendously positive experience. So that's a little bit about learning styles, a little bit about my children, a little bit about my CIA students, and I'm very happy to answer any questions for anyone downstairs. And again, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I encourage you, if there's anything I could do for any of you in making this decision to homeschool your children, please reach out to me. I would be delighted to talk to you or be an ongoing resource. You can run, but you can't hide from me, okay, if we connect. Thank you so much, Pastor Harris.
I think it's safe to say she's excited about what she was able to do with her kids. Plus, the plug at the end is your kids can actually be more advanced, because our children did the same thing, and my wife will probably mention something about that. Next is my wife, Diane. She was the teacher. I was the principal. So if the kids got out of line, well, they came and saw the principal. It's nice to be homeschooled. The principal was always there. Diane's going to talk a little bit about curriculum. You can pick curriculum to match your child's learning style. You also pick curriculum to match your ability, both logistically, do you have the time, and what works for you. So she'll talk a little bit about that and what we do with our own kids. Thank you, dear.
You're welcome. Hello, and I would like to make myself available to you too, just as Denise just did, because our family loved homeschooling. It was, I homeschooled my children from K4 through their senior year in high school. They went to college concurrently, and it was a wonderful experience for our family. It was a bonding experience, just great in every way. Not that I didn't have my moments, because I did. When I would say, why are we doing this? Because there were days that were hard. But I had 3 children 4 and under. And so it was kind of a balancing act to do it. But it was a good experience, and I would encourage anybody to do it. So curriculum. Curriculum can be very overwhelming. And when I first started to homeschool, I didn't know what I was doing. So I came to a homeschool meeting, met some women, looked at some curriculum, and decided to go the safe route, which was a textbook to start, which is where most people that are newbies start with textbooks, because it's traditional, it's safe, because everything is already laid out. There aren't any holes. You're not going to miss anything, and that's one of the biggest fears is well, in addition to the socialization issue, which really isn't an issue, because we were always thinking, how can we lessen the socialization, because we're too busy for all the socialization. But homeschool parents are usually afraid, especially if they're not teachers, that they'll leave something out, that their children will grow up and all of a sudden there'll be something big that they never got taught, and they'll come home and say, Mom, why didn't you teach me this? It cost me my job or something, and we're insecure when we just start out. At least I was, a lot of people are. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about curriculums. It's actually pretty easy when you boil it all down. You can spend in time and in energy and money as much or as little as you want to. It's each curriculum is differently priced. It offers different things. But there are 3 basic categories. And I have a handout. If you picked up the handouts on the table there, I do have a handout of the curriculum choices, and there's also a handout on learning styles back there too, if you want to look at that. It is not in your main handout. So there are 3 basic categories of curriculum. The first is textbooks. Another one is consumable workbooks or work texts, and the third is unit studies. And all of the curriculum pretty much line up in those 3 areas. So you look at what the mom and what the family is willing to do, what it can do, how much money you have to put into it, what the children do, what their learning styles are, and how motivated they are, and then you make a decision. And most of us that have homeschooled don't stick with the same curriculum year after year after year. We start out with something, and then through the years, if we see something else might work better or might work better for one child. I have a disabled child that's learning disabled, and the things that worked with the first 2 didn't work for him. And there is a lot of support, by the way, if you do have a disabled child or know of one. HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, has a special ed teacher that will talk to you. I went to my local public school that's next door to the church, and we live next door here, and for testing in 5th grade and in 10th grade for my son. And both times they told me to continue homeschooling him, that they could not do any better than what was being done. And they actually asked me if I'd like a special ed teacher. And I said, I'd like one to just maybe call me every week or 2. So they said, yeah, great. So a special ed teacher called me every 2 weeks. But she never told me anything that I hadn't already tried. And not to say that I'm so smart, I'm not a teacher, but I knew my son. And so I had already tried, and I knew some teachers, so I already had tried some things. Anyway, so textbooks. Textbooks have strengths and they have weaknesses. One of the strengths is, for beginner homeschoolers, they're great. They provide the security. that you need, that you're not going to miss anything, and they have, all curriculum has teachers' editions. So you have all the answers right there. So if you decide you're going to homeschool algebra or geometry, but you don't really feel like you can homeschool algebra or geometry in high school, you have a teacher's edition that has all the answers, even tells you how they got there. So those add a lot of security too. And even if you know all the answers, it's so much easier if you have multiple children to go down a checklist of right and wrong instead of having to do those problems every time all by yourself, even though you can do them. So it gives a lot of security. It also, basically, everything is spelled out ahead of time, and it's in detail. You can organize it. You can organize your whole year. You look at the Bill. Thanks. So you can, I don't know if, is this on still? Okay. All right. So you can plan out your year. And by the way, you only have to accomplish 80% as far as the state regulations of what you say you're going to do. So, and Kara will talk about all the regulations, but you look at the halfway mark, you figure out what do you want to get through in that year, and then you can pace yourself month after month, chapter after chapter, and you know you're not behind, you're not ahead, or if you are any of those things, you know it, and you can catch up. So there are no surprises. Everything is right there. Textbooks also provide parents, teachers with a very complete program. It's comprehensive. And each year builds on its own. So in first grade, you have American history. You also have American history in third or fourth grade, and you have it again in high school, and you have it again in college. But it builds each year. It builds. It's the same thing, but it's more detail the older you get. So that repetition helps you learn as well. Weaknesses of textbooks. Well, it is comprehensive, and so the textbooks are designed to be the sole source of information, and they're going to be designed and written by one teacher or a committee of teachers. So you're going to get one perspective. That is fine. I mean, you just choose your textbooks wisely so that you know that you agree with the things that are being taught. And in the upper grades, you may have to you may want to introduce some extra resources if you want them to think more analytically about something. Basically, I was thinking how what things could that apply to? Say you have a subject like the Civil War or the Revolutionary War. Those are very complicated subjects. And if you, and your book, your textbook is going to present them hopefully in a balanced way and both sides, what they were thinking and all that. But that doesn't always happen with all curriculums. So you want to, one of the best ways even to deal with that is you study your textbook in school. You can also introduce other things, but then one of the best times that we had, and I've heard it from other people too, is talk about it at the dinner table. Whenever the family's together and discuss all these things. Our dinner table, our dinners lasted hours sometimes. And with one by one, we would get up and walk away because our oldest loved to play the devil's advocate and loved to argue points, and Scott and him would sit there and we would all just be like, we've been sitting here 2 hours, we're gonna go do something else. But it was a very good learning experience for the kids because they learned to look at all sides of things. Because you not only want to teach them the facts, you want to teach them to think for themselves, to evaluate things critically, not to be critical, but to be critical in what they're listening to, learning, watching. I mean, you would do that with anything, with their entertainment choices. You don't want to just have them read and think everything they read is true or everything they watch is true. That's not true. So you want to definitely help them to learn to think and find the answers, show them how to find the answers, where to find the answers. Another weakness is textbooks are pretty much fact-based. And so you get a lot of multiple choice questions, and the tests would be, well, one-word answers, maybe, choose a word from here, plug it in. And the problem with that is it teaches them, and it's not a bad problem, it's a good problem. I mean, they need to be tested on the information they know, but it kind of shows them that learning is simply regurgitating the facts and putting the answer on paper. And so that's when it's helpful to discuss things after hours, to ask them questions, or even if you're making up your own tests, ask them some essay questions so they really understand it. Textbooks also don't take into account a child's background or their interests, because they can't. They've got to be generic for every student. So, but you know your children, and so in going through the curriculum, if you see something that's really going to interest your children or one of your children, focus on that, build on it, let them do a special project to present to the family or to the other kids. And there are, co-ops and things like that for homeschooling where they can have those opportunities too. So you can feel free to modify or change or leave some things out of a textbook, add some things to that. You can still do the textbook, but you want to make sure that, I'm sure there are certain things that you remember from your grammar school years, but you don't remember everything you learned. There's no way. And they will not remember everything they learned. But if you teach them how to find the answers and how to do the research, that will pay off in the end. Examples of textbooks. I listed 5 here. Abeka and Bob Jones University Press, these are all Christian examples, also have academies that go with them. So whereas the other 3 do not have that, Abeka and Bob Jones have schools. It would cost more, but you can, these academies do everything for you. That you can, there's a few choices how you view the material. You could view it on the computer or DVDs. Teachers are teaching it, different teachers teaching each subject usually. And then you have the books that you would test them. But if in the academies, they will grade the tests. They will even give you the annual test, the main annual test, like the California Achievement Test or whatever they do, SAT test. They will do transcripts and diplomas and graduations and report cards. They'll do all of it so that the workload is much less on the homeschooler parent. Apologia is mostly for science, Saxon Math mostly for math, so you can get textbooks just for those things as well. Consumable work texts or workbooks, those are, we call them work texts because there is no text. They're just like a workbook, and they teach, and then they ask questions that the student answers. So they're pretty easy to figure out. The strengths is that children can work independently with those, and they can also work at their own pace. So if you have an accelerated child or a child that is a little slower, they can both work at their own pace. And they'll just sit at the table or whatever, desk, and they will do their homework. And you would decide when they would get breaks. It's much less labor intensive for the parent. That's definitely a strength. If you're working or have anything else, a reason that you can't be that involved, it's cheaper. They make it, this kind of curriculum makes it possible for families to homeschool even when there's an illness in the family, like someone has a serious illness, or both parents have to work and are just not available around to homeschool their children. It's an independent study. The cons, or the weaknesses of that one, of workbooks, is that sometimes they can be boring. If you just had a workbook, or several workbooks, it can get boring, and it could be difficult if they need help, and especially if they're not self-motivated, which we now know is an emotion. to be motivated. But still, if they don't have that commitment, they could easily weasel out of it and say, well, I just didn't feel good, I was just tired, whatever. So parents will have to be involved at some point with this, because not only are you going to be grading it, but you're going to be sorry, I'm already thinking of the next thing I'm going to say. Parents are going to have to get involved because by, say, 3rd grade, I would think they could do what they, be independent in doing their workbook. Before that, a lot of them can't read or can't read well enough to really understand concepts. So the parent does need to be available around to ask questions. So I'm thinking of like a parent that has a home business or something like that can't just sit there but can be available to help would be a great fit. So examples. Accelerated Christian Education, ACE. This is just workbooks. It's very inexpensive. You just buy the workbooks. Kids are independent. Oh, Alpha Omega has the same thing. I actually used some Alpha Omega. It was very good. They also have the workbooks online. So if your child needs more of colors and a little bit different experience, a little more multimedia, they can do that online. They also have a computer-based one, and they also have an academy that offers the teaching and everything, and they just do their workbooks still, so similar to the textbooks. I didn't put this down. I guess you'd have to see the handout. Textbooks, I did write this down after the fact because I thought you might need it, but textbooks appeal. They're very good for visual learners, when the children are visual learners. Auditory learners, by hearing, they do well with listening to the teacher talk, or another way to handle that is they read. An auditory reader can just read everything out loud, and that helps that person to learn. Whereas the workbooks, again, weakness or examples, they're very good if you're a visual learner. Auditory learners, same thing. If they have a little bit of interaction, they'll do a lot better. So unit studies. Unit studies are great for everybody. And the kinesthetic learner that is hands-on, they are excellent for. But whoever is doing the teaching needs to also be a creative person that can teach comprehensively, because it's very involved. So a unit study is a theme. It's a theme-based unit, just like we take units in college. You have a 1-unit class and it's one subject and it's short. A unit study in homeschooling would be anywhere from 6 to 8, maybe 10 units in the school year. And each unit covers most of the subjects. So, for example, if you were going to do a unit study on George Washington, say you're in middle school or high school, you're going to do one on George Washington. Actually, it'll work for any age. You can do presidents. You can talk about presidents. You can talk about the Revolutionary War, the French Indian War. This is all history. You can talk, presidents would be government. You can talk about, or do things, not just talk about it, but do things like military things, go to field trips at West Point. Washington has 3 headquarters around here. The Beekman Arms up in Rhinebeck restaurant is one place where Washington was. You could study the colonial period. Music, you could learn a song about that period, or you could learn about the instruments of that period. You could learn the science of how a musket works, or farming. George Washington he was a farmer, he grew wheat, and he designed a round barn, which was, I think, the first of its kind. I've seen it. It has 16 sides to it, all to have horses going around and breaking up the wheat for him. He did a lot of farming and knew the science of farming. So that's another one. For art, you could make a flag. like the Betsy Ross flag. You could read extra books like Johnny Tremaine, excellent children's book. And by the way, I have a book called Books Children Love. I think the library also has it. It is such a good book that I don't know if you did it, but I cheated and I read ahead when we weren't reading it to the kids because I couldn't wait to see what happened. So the strengths. All ages and all grades participate in a unit study from kindergarten through high school because it's the same, just on a lower level for the younger students. So everybody participates, and there's a lot, less expectations for the younger children. The older kids learn, like Scott said, they learn from the teaching. They also the younger kids learn from the older kids because they're hearing all the same things. So it works out very well. The younger kids are exposed by the older kids' stuff. And once you learn something, when you teach it, you really know it. And so the younger children are learning also from the older children, from the older siblings. So it's a win-win. It works well for children on the autism spectrum as well, because often those children have narrow interests. So it's very helpful for you to capitalize on that and help them be interested in certain things. It works well. You have to be creative. I did this. I've done all these things. I've done workbooks, I've done textbooks, and I've done unit studies. And it does take a lot of time. So it's for the creative parent. And some mothers even parents create their own curriculum. They don't even go with a unit study company, and there are several of them, but they'll even make their own. It's very inexpensive. I mean, you could spend almost nothing doing this. You go to the library to get the books. They tell you in the Konos and Weaver, they tell you what books to check out at the library, and the librarians get to know you, and they'll have your stack waiting. They get them all for you. You just tell them what you need. So there's a lot of free resources, so it's very inexpensive. It's a hands-on approach, so that kinesthetic learner that's hands-on, they love it. Plus there's a lot of retention. With textbooks and with workbooks, you can tend to cram and get it done and forget about it later. With this, everything works into it. I think of it like my career. I was a nurse, and I realized early on in nursing school that I couldn't possibly learn everything that I needed to know. There was no way. And after I learned my anatomy and physiology, and the other subjects I had to take, and I started taking the nursing courses, I realized that I began to really understand it. So if I heard about a disease, I already knew what would happen with that because I had studied the basics. I didn't have to learn every detail. I understood it. So that's our goal in homeschooling. They will, when you build on things and you bring multiple of subjects in to one theme, you really leave with an understanding of that subject. So it's good for retention. You get the whole picture, and it's fun. There's a lot of field trips you can do. It's just a lot of fun. We took, I think one of my favorite field trips, we took a lot of field trips. And my husband's a pastor, so he works on Sunday. So we would go during the week. And April 18th is my
birthday and Paul Revere's ride.
Paul Revere's ride. Thank you. Blanking on his name. Paul Revere had his ride, his famous ride. So April 17th, we set out for Concord. We stayed the night in an old inn, and we had a discount we got up early the next morning, and we saw the skirmishes, the reenactments, and it just brought it all home, everything we had studied. We read a book on the way there. We were reading Johnny Tremaine. That was what took place at that time. That's the period. So doing things like that is just really a lot of fun, and the whole family benefits from it. Weaknesses. For unit studies, it is very, 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 did I say very? Time and labor intensive for the parent. There's a lot of planning. If you like that, you will absolutely love it. If you don't like that, then you might want to, you could do, you're going to do the minimum probably, but you'd want one of these books that tells you what to get from the library and spells that out for you more. They give you options. They don't tell you exactly what to do. They give you a lot of options. So they need a lot of preparation for planning. It's eclectic, and especially if somebody makes up their own unit study, there is the possibility that some common fundamentals could be left out. So you don't want to do that if possible. It can lack structure, and if there's the children or the parent needs a lot of structure, if the parent needs a lot of structure, that can be dealt with. You just discipline yourself to have the structure for the children. But if the children need a lot of structure, then the parents have to provide that. So it won't be so loose that they need more structure. So my kids needed a little more structure, so we didn't do that long. But when we did do it, it was really good. You might have to use additional curriculum because math is not something that's covered in these unit studies. You could work it out so that there's some math, but in order to really understand math, you'd have to have a math book as well. Yeah, so, and it's excellent for all learners. So curriculum for high school, which many of you may not be there, but just to throw this in, we did what Denise did with our children, and not to save, not because our kids would be accelerated or anything like that. It saved us a lot of money and a lot of time going to college concurrently with going to high school. So my first son ended up graduating with his 4-year degree at 19 years old. And our second son he started at 17 in college, but he traveled. He was a missionary 3 times to South Africa. So he didn't really graduate from his college till he was about 21, 22, I think. But it saved us a lot of time, and there's CLEP testing and Dante's testing. So that can save you a lot of money and time as well. Study guides, take a test, you don't have to take the class, especially when some of the classes in college now, you don't really want your kids taking, English 1 being one of them, because even when our kids were taking English 1, they're interpreting literature from today's perverted perspective instead of the Jane Austen and all kinds of other things that are really, they're interpreting it making the children think perversely about it, which really isn't very good. So, but all that to say is it is a wonderful thing, and just the fact that you're curious about it, looking into it, I applaud you, because your families might say, what do you mean you're going to homeschool? But you can. You don't have to be a teacher. You just have to be a loving parent that wants the best for their kids. And if you decide that's what the best is, we are here, our church, and we personally are here to support you.
So we're going to have people downstairs. They actually have their curriculum. You can take a look at that kind of stuff, so it's not so overwhelming. Because as she said at the beginning, the first time it's like, what am I going to do? But the help is there to help guide you and figure out your child. We mentioned learning styles. There's actually some assessment things you can do in your handout. I think I mentioned the one at HSLDA. There's some other ones, quizzing, observation of your child, to help you figure out how I'll do that. The other thing that's usually, yes, ma'am.
There is a handout about learning styles that is not included in your packet. It's on the table as you leave the room where it's supposed to.
Okay, great, because that's helpful. The other thing that tends to frighten people who are going to be new to homeschooling is regulations. Oh no, how am I going to make sure that I'm not in trouble with the state? It's not that hard. We have an expert. Kara Manuel is very good, and downstairs we're going to have some LEA representatives. It will vary from district to district how nice or how nasty they are towards you, but we have good laws, and there are some good groups like Homeschool Legal Defense Association, HSLDA, that can help you work through all that stuff. So you don't need to fear it. So Kara's going to come and explain kind of briefly what's required and how to get through it without a problem. How's that? Come on up, Karen.
Hello, my name is Kara, and I have 5 children, 4 sons, 1 daughter. This is my 11th year homeschooling. Yes, I've already begun. I'm overeager this year to begin. When I first began, I sought a lot of advice as well, so I applaud you as well to go and make connections, ask questions, ask, and don't stop for the first year or 2. And I'm happy to share some advice with you today, so hopefully come down and talk to me after. I'll answer more questions. So how do you begin homeschooling? First, I'm going to tell you the first main 4 steps, and then I'll give you some tips as well as some commonly asked questions, try to answer those up front. So the first step is letter of intent. It's also seen on many websites as LOI. You see this everywhere. This is a simple letter sent to your school district telling them that you intend to homeschool your child that year. The letter can be 1 sentence long, and that's what I send every year. 1 sentence, that's all it needs to be. This is what I actually write. Dear so-and-so, that would be your administrator at your school district. I am sending you this letter to inform you that I'm homeschooling my child's name, for the 2021-22 school year. Simply sign and date it and mail it. That begins your whole process. So is this a time to complain? I'm tired of my school district. I'm so angry, these masks or whatever it was. No, start off on the right foot. Just send that letter and it begins. So as soon as you send the letter, shortly in the mail, you should receive one of these, a school district packet, as well as a letter saying that they received your information. Some school districts are good about this. They send it pretty quickly. Some school districts do not. So what should you do if you don't get one? Don't panic, just keep on working towards your plan. They are supposed to follow the law and send it, but they often do not. I live in Wappingers. They've been really good. In the past they weren't, but recently they've become really good. They follow the law, they send out your thing, there's not any problem. So I'm coming from the perspective of it's quite easy. Some of you who's in Arlington, so that's going to be hard for you, some of these things. You're probably not going to get a response in some of these. So if you've been homeschooling after your first year, your letter is due every year on July 1st. You do send one for every child every year. Cut and paste it, save it each year, just change the date, easy. And remember, if you're still on the fence, I'm not sure about this, I'm gonna go the first start of the year, see how things play out. If I get upset, you can take them out at any time and start this. So it's really open. You can start this in October if you want to. Step 2, the individual home instruction plan, otherwise known as the IHIP on all the websites. This can be filled out 2 different ways. It can be a list of syllabi, curriculum, material used, your textbook list. This works for people like me because I'm kind of organized. I want to know what I'm doing at the beginning of the year. It's kind of my personality. However, some people prefer the plan of instruction. People that are in Arlington, maybe you want to take this choice because they're more nitpicky about what you're doing, and you can be very, very vague and just say, I'm going to study such and such topic by going to the library, using websites, and talking with friends in a discussion group or something. It's very vague. I don't do that. I'm not in that district, so it works for me. I just actually write what I'm going to do because I need a plan. That's just who I am. On this IHIP, you need your child's name, quarterly report dates. There are different requirements, grades 1 through 6, it's 900 hours of instruction, grades 7 and 8, and 9 through 12, it's 990 hours per year. How you use that time can vary. So we often are asked, like, I have a 7-year-old, they can't sit and do 1 hour of math, 1 hour of this, 1 hour of that, what do I do? You get to use your time how you want. So you can have a lot more PE versus a lot more sitting at a table doing actual textbooks. You can use the IHIP from your school district. It is in there, but make sure it's actually following the law. Ours is good. It's actually accurate. They changed it, they upgraded it, and other school districts, it has other information. So if they're asking you for things like your child's social security number or your medical records or all this other information, make sure you know the actual law, because you don't have to give them that information, and don't. So remember that your school district is not approving your plan. They should simply be checking that you have covered the actual requirements that's in the law. Step 3, quarterly reports. We are required to have 4 quarterly reports. Again, you can use the form that the school district provides. I started using it. They upgraded it, and it's actually quite easy and not a difficult thing to do. However, you can create your own. You can type it, you can handwrite it. It's up to you. So there's a lot of choices there. That's the thing I want to tell you. Choices, 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 which is good. Do you have to list everything on it? No, just highlight a few key things that you studied. So if you like typing and writing and you could have pages and pages and pages of things that you covered over that quarter alone. Just pick 3 or 4. That's all you have to do. It should also have a description of the child's progress. I simply write average, above average, below average. Is it okay to write a below average? Yeah. One of my kids spells terribly, and I just say it's below average, but we're working on it, and I just write that underneath. We just keep working and plugging away at it, but yeah, be honest. It's fine. You're not going to get in trouble for that. I've done it many times. Here's a helpful tip. On all my quarterly reports, I write down the chapter books we've read. We read a lot of books. I write it right on the thing. It's not for the school, it's just for me. I have a lot of kids, so as I go through the years and I'm back to teaching 3rd grade or back to teaching this grade, I can just go, it's right there in a handy little file, and I know what I used to do, so I can remember what I did then and repeat it if it was great. A second tip, although you are not required to follow the recommended due dates on your quarterlies, people have always suggested to me, try to do it. Do you really want to be the one that does something different? So your quarterly report is the only one sitting in the desk rather than hundreds of them all at once so they can nitpick through it? Probably not. Choose the date they actually want, unless you have something that you really can't, attend to your quarterly report then. Step 4, testing or the end of year evaluation. You have choices here too. You have the choice of using standardized testing. You must do that every other year from 4th to 8th grade and every year through high school, 9th through 12th. The other option is a narrative assessment or peer review. You can get a group of peers or a New York certified teacher to check over your work and certify that you have covered 80% of what you said you would do. The choice of testing or evaluation should be included in your 3rd quarterly report, and you would submit the results in your 4th quarterly report. I personally use testing every year from 1st grade right through. I think it validates that I've actually teaching my child something, but you may have had bad experiences coming out of public school. I'm so tired of testing, it's stressful. You can choose not to do that. It's up to you. So there's choices, 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 which is great. Some important tips I'd like to share with you. Send your correspondence to the superintendent of your school district. Some will send it by certified mail, return receipt, hand deliver it to your office. Arlington people, you should probably take that step. Make the effort to do these extra steps so you have because they've had problems. And Wappingers, I don't do this. There's not the need right now. It can always change. People get a new job, we have a new problem. Get to know people within your district. Ask around. It's not a problem in Wappingers for the last 3 to 4 years. It's been great. There's not an issue. So I don't make this effort. You can. Do it if you should. I strongly encourage you to make a copy of every single thing you send to them as well as receive to them. I can't say that enough. Put it in a binder. Have it organized by child, by year. Anything that comes up, I can instantly find it, probably within 30 seconds, because it's just organized. I have my binder here. You're free to look at anything I've done. It's only 2 years worth because I have more than one binder, because I save everything. If you call them on the phone, especially in Arlington or other districts, document it, write it down. Emails, print it. Actually have a hard copy. Don't just assume, oh, it's on my computer. Sadly, I know a mom that her computer crashed. They couldn't find it. It caused all sorts of problems within the district and it took a long time to fix. So avoid those problems. Actually print it out. Other tips, make your IHIP easy for the reader. Just think of the other person. Wow, they're going to be reading this. I bold or underline every single law that's required. I mean, this is very common sense, but you look at it, check, 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 check. She covered everything even before I read it. All bases are covered. If you're a mom like me, you probably cover a lot of the extraneous add-ons. You'll see in the law is this bolded section at the bottom that they just tacked on, like highway and traffic safety, alcohol and drug abuse, all this other library skills. It's just kind of tacked on with no explanation. What is that? Well, you probably cover it every year anyways. If you're a mom like me, do you ever say things like this? Put your bike helmet on. Put on your seatbelt. Yes? Am I the only one? Yeah. Look both ways before you cross the street. Don't just go. Yeah, you're covering highway and traffic safety issues. So I am doing it every year. It's just coming up in everyday life because there's really mom and homeschool teacher, it's a blur. It all runs together. It's just your life. Using words like including but not limited to can be helpful. Can give you some freedom, or may use the library on an as-needed basis. I use that term a lot. Things I'm not going to teach from a textbook. So some commonly asked questions. I have a 5-year-old. Do I have to report them? You must report to the school district on or before December 1st, the year your child turns 6. That's like the biggest question I answer all the time. So my child turns 6 December 10th. Do you report? No, it's after December 1st. My child turns 6 October 15th. Do you report? Yes, it's before December 1st of that school year. So yes, then the next question automatically is, so they're not reporting. What do I do? Should I mail in stuff anyways? Do you like paperwork? If you do, yeah, you can do that. But if you don't, there's better things to do with your time. Don't report. Why? Have fun that year. Explore things. Go look at the stars and whatever your child's interest is. Maybe add some math and phonics because they're really young at that age, but enjoy the year. Can I use different types of measurements on my quarterly reports? Yes, you can. So I gave the example that teaching textbooks is a very popular math program. It actually teaches it. It gives you quizzes. It gives you grades. It frees up mom. I use it frequently with my kids because I just can't teach all these subjects to all these kids. It's great. But it gives you a math grade. So I use in that subject, they get an actual grade. He got an 89 or he got a this or whatever it is. You can put the grade number, but then in another subject, I just write above average or below average. So yes, you can use different measurements on that report. Do I have to use books or textbooks for everything? So I told you about these add-on things. They're just kind of plunked at the bottom of the requirements. I do not use books for any of those things. I'm not going to buy a textbook for highway and traffic safety. Your family may need that. I don't know. Every family is different. I don't think anything more than telling them that and reminding them of it when I see it is important to me. It may be to you. That's up to you. There's a lot of choices with homeschooling, and which is a good thing. Another thing is like drug and alcohol abuse. For my family, I think it's just perfectly fine to say, don't take drugs. I'm going to be really upset with you. Never do that. It's bad, and that's the extent of it. And I'll write on the on the IHIP, like, but we'll check out library books on an as-needed basis. I don't really see the as needed. I probably will never check out a library book, but it could happen. Maybe they'll have a question that I have no idea, and I'll just say, well, let's get out a book. So I covered that as needed. What if my child is doing poorly in a subject? Should I be honest and say they're not doing great? I have. I gave you the example of spelling. One of my sons terrible at spelling, and I just write it's below average. But we keep working on it, and I've never, ever had a problem with that. Do you have to tell them everything? No, just keep it vague. But I don't see why you would not tell them. How can I cover PE? My daughter hates sports. There's a common question. Can you just write something like they play on our playground, they ride their bike, we take walks as a family, or go mountain bike riding, hiking, whatever? Yes, you can. Even fishing's a sport. The law says regularly. What does that mean for PE or some of these other tacked on subjects at the end? Regularly is different for every family. One family it's once a week, one family it's once a day, one family it's once a month. So what is regularly? That's a really vague term, so it gives us a lot of freedom. You make that decision. I'm not encouraging you not to get your kids outside and exercise. It's actually something I love, and we do a lot as a family. But as moms, we get guilty, like, oh, grandma came, then there was a wedding, and then this happened, and 3 weeks have gone by, and I haven't even covered that, and I'm supposed to be doing this. What do I do? And you get all caught up in this stress of, I should be doing this, but I'm not, and I haven't, and you don't have to worry about that. It just says regularly, just pick it up when you can, and just get back on it. Nobody's actually going to check you on that. What are practical arts? This is like a really, really big question. It's required in 7th and 8th grade. Essentially, it's helping your child become a functional, productive adult. So that will look different in every family. It can be things like ironing your own clothes. That's a big one. Start ironing your own clothes. I'm not doing it anymore. Washing dishes, balancing a checkbook, mowing the lawn, car maintenance. The list goes on and on and on, and will look different for every family. Maybe you live in a rural setting, you're feeding the chickens every day and taking on farming duties. Maybe you live in the center of Poughkeepsie and you're doing something else. You're shoveling the sidewalk or whatever that would be. It could be different for every family. What you don't want is growing up as an adult and not knowing how to do some simple tasks. So here's a great example. When I went to college, my first year, my freshman year, we went first week, and my roommate and I, we went to the laundromat. She didn't know how to use the wash machine. Like, this is really sad to me. I started at 7 years old. I was the kid that took the chair and climbed up, and then my mom wouldn't be happy if the whites were pink, but I tried, and I just was very independent. So she was like, Kara, I don't even know how to do this. I said, you take 5 quarters, $1.25, you put them in here, throw your clothes in, measure the soap. This isn't what you want. We want to make our kids functional. So that's what practical arts are. Start getting your kids ready for adult life. What do I do? The regs just say science. It's vague. What do you do with science? This is the glory of homeschooling. You get to choose what you want. You get to tailor your education to your child. So that is fantastic. So in first grade, my oldest son wanted to study chemistry. He thought it was great. Let's make things and try to get him to explode and do all. And I found an elementary level that he could understand. And we did that. We boiled cabbages and we saw if it was acidic or basic, and it was fun, and I had more time than I do now, and it was great. But maybe your child has an interest in astronomy, or maybe your child has an interest in insects, or whatever else it is. Go and study that, because you don't have to copy what the schools are. If you want to, you have the freedom to do that too, but I wouldn't suggest it, honestly. Just do what your kid likes. You'll have fun. Can I administer my own end-of-year tests? Yes, you can. And the best place is Academic Excellence. It's $25 a year. A test, I'm sorry, I said a year. And there's usually a coupon for $5 off, usually right around March and April every year conveniently. So it's $20, it's there every year. You can buy the untimed or timed test. If you choose this route, it's easy. You get your results like literally within 10 seconds. You can print it off and you have a copy of it, save it in your binder. I can't say that enough. The goal for me was not to have my kids testing like the school, to be stressed and upset and worried. We just do the untimed test. It works out perfectly. We usually do it over the course of an entire week. We just do a little section. You can even stop in the middle, start back up. So I've had a great experience homeschooling. I love homeschooling. I like to encourage others. If you have any questions, you can come downstairs, ask, please. Thank you.
Lots of choices. I know we have some folks here. We have both Leahs represented tonight? Or just one? Just you, okay. No, it's fine. Come on up, Rosie. All right. Well, because you're going to be streamed, okay? This is going to be recorded. You're going to be out there on YouTube from now on. It's on there. So
I'm excited.
you're excited, but I don't know. Are there any other the support groups here tonight? Did Sharon make it?
No. CCH is here.
Okay, you're going to come up too then. Introduce yourself. We have several support groups downstairs. If you're in Arlington, you have to talk to Rosie, okay?
Yeah.
And Teresa, because Arlington's a different animal. Arlington's what Wappingers used to be. Wappingers is really nice now. Do mention something about HSLDA and why you need to be part of one of those groups. So we're going to have a couple of support groups. Also, like Carol will be down there. We have a couple of other homeschool moms that have their curriculum out. You can take a look at it. You can ask them lots of questions. But there are also support groups. Classical Conversations is not here this evening, but it's one of our support groups. And then, well, come on up. Yeah, like who you are, what you do. Yeah, like 5 minutes, okay?
I'll do my best.
Okay, you warned me already. So
Yeah, I know, I
stand
do.
up here.
Yeah, well, do you have a stick or a
I'll
hook
get
or
one.
something? They could just cut the mic.
I'll pull her off.
You got
Yeah.
that, Phil?
Yeah, okay. All right, so my name is Rosie.
Teresa.
This is Teresa. She's my partner in crime. We're co-leaders of Hudson Valley Leah. All right, so if you were at the Homeschool 101 event up at Calvary, some of you look familiar. You might recognize this face and this voice. So I just want to go through, like, if you go to the homeschool resource list real quick, all right, the top resource says New York State Leah. Do not search that. Leah Remini and Scientology will come up. All right, I mean, it's pretty cool. She has the whole anti-Scientology thing, but the official name of the organization is Homeschool New York / Leah, Leah. All right, that will get you where you need to go if you forget the website, which is www.leah.org. So do you want to talk about what Leah is, or do you want me to keep going? Okay, so Leah is a homeschool support group. They're a statewide homeschool support group. They are a Christian organization. Each chapter is run autonomously. Some are more Christian than others. Each chapter leader must be a Christian and have a statement of faith and
We require our
a
members-
testimony. Yeah, so we require that our members for our chapter acknowledge our statement of faith. Not everyone in our chapter is a Christian, and we're respectful of that.
Absolutely.
And they're also respectful of our statement of faith, which is like a really cool dynamic that we have in our chapter in particular. All right, what's next? All right, Hudson Valley Leah, okay. The email address is incorrect. That's my personal email address. If you send it to me, it will get wrapped up with all my CVS coupons
Yeah.
that come in, all right? So you're gonna wanna email hvleah@gmail.com. Do you want to parrot me? You want to say it again? Come on now.
No, hvleah.
hvleah@gmail.com. We've been friends for a very long time.
Yeah, which is good.
So, you know, this is just how it is every day. All right. What else do I need to say here, Teresa? I introduced who you are. Okay, a couple things. If, like, some districts are more persnickety than others, it is very important that you join HSLDA well, do you want to bet? You lost $10 last time we did this. It's called Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Because that's what they are.
She calls them attorneys all the time. Don't listen to her. She's wrong.
But it is associated.
All right, it's association. Okay.
And when you join New York State LEA, you do get a discount with them. But only I or whatever chapter you join would give you a discount code, and you'll save even more money on them.
Yeah.
But,
There are 2 chapters in the area, by the way. There's actually another one in Orange County and one over in Westchester, Putnam, too. So there's a bunch of chapters in the area. So if, like, our chapter doesn't do it for you,
we can,
do your thing. We'll recommend you to other people.
absolutely.
That's cool. It's hard to offend us. All right. So you're going to want to join HSLDA and or Heritage Defense. Teresa and I belong to both
so I
organizations.
have lots of stuff downstairs, so just come see me. I'll give you brochures on both of them.
Yeah, we work with both organizations, kind of like,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
they send us stuff and we give it out to you guys. So, all right, what else? Your paperwork. Kara said you send it to your administrator. Your administrator is always your superintendent of schools. First.
Right.
First. They can outsource it to someone else, which is totally cool within their rights. Your letter of intent should always be addressed to them, care of whoever else, pick a name, whoever else their administrator is. All right? That's where you should start. It saves your behind. Okay? It will save your behind. Keep copies of your paperwork. Kara she's in a unicorn district. All right? It's so cool. All right? Not every district is like that. So Teresa and I are always going to recommend, and HSLDA will too, that you email things or you snail mail with returned receipt. Yes, certified mail. Or you walk in
Yes, like I do.
and have
And
2 copies
deliver.
stamped.
Yep.
One for you, one for them.
Yep.
All right? Having that paper trail will save you a big, huge headache. And I've had one in our district before they went crazy. All right? Before things got bad, I had one in our district. I had a headache. And having this evidence that I sent them stuff saved me. All right? Saved me. All right.
One more thing to add.
Go ahead.
There is a special PICLEA.
Oh, PICLEA for special parents of special needs children.
So that is
Something
offered-
like that. I can't remember what it all means.
That's offered within
Parents
Homeschooling New York
instructing challenged children.
State. So if you join
Thank you.
LEA, you can actually have that too.
Yeah,
as
you
a-
get access to Mary Fradiani, and she's like, you think I talk fast and I'm a
Yeah.
good resource? Forget it. If you get her on the phone, make sure you have a notebook out, pen and paper.
No, I think you
and
just record
just
the whole message.
yeah, take good notes. She's amazing.
Yes.
She's got so much information for parents.
I think that's it. We're good.
No, there's not. There's
You're 5
more. I
minutes
got notes.
done.
No,
7
there's no
minutes.
timer back there. All right. We'll be hosting another homeschool event coming up within the next couple of weeks, probably 4 weeks. Teresa just rolled her eyes at me because she's like, you just told me about it today. But because we know people need more help, like in-depth help with the regulations, more in-depth help with certain things. And we have parents asking for like a networking event, right? So that you can get to know each other. I know there's not like a huge amount of people here, but like we deal with people all day, every day,
Yeah.
probably 100 over the past few weeks. It's like,
Way
it's nuts.
Yeah.
All right. I have to take time for Georgia now, so this isn't me. Georgia. Okay. So if you go down where it says music, we're going to skip over Trish and sports right now. Sorry, Trish. All right. If you go down to music, it says the Agape Music Co-op. Now, this is from one of the organizers. She said she couldn't make it, and she's sorry. The ages 3 to 6 is full, unfortunately, but there is space in the other two age groups, the 9 to 11 and the 12 plus. Okay, and I can tell you, I know all the teachers here personally. They're really good. They're really good teachers, especially Jen Mary. She's got a heart for the little kids like you wouldn't believe.
She's a veteran homeschooler.
All right, what else? I said, oh, and I was also told by her that Calvary Chapel of the Hudson Valley has space in their preschool. Now, I know, why are we bringing up preschool during homeschooling? You might need a break if you are not used to having all your kids home all the time. All right, and it's okay, because you want to go to bed with the same amount of kids you woke up with. Okay, so this might be something you're interested in, and Teresa and I can give you the contact information for Calvary Chapel. Later on tonight, we'll be downstairs, everybody. Thank you for giving me your time.
All right, so I'm Trish Croak. I'm from Dutchess County Homeschool Sports. I'm a I graduated, my youngest child is 20. So I have 4 kids that are graduated already, homeschooled them through high school. Can you, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? So I was in a great co-op. If you can get into a good co-op, that really was awesome for my kids. I was the gym teacher for that co-op. I saw a lot of kids with a lot of talents, a lot of what is it called, sports abilities, but they weren't a part of any sports programs. And I love sports. I was a basketball player. I played softball. I was a cheerleader. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave this. I'm going to leave the co-op, and I'm going to try to start a basketball team. That was 11 or 12 years ago. And it grew from a girls' basketball team, and we competed against the local Christian schools. We also competed against the towns and the private schools in the area. From that, it grew into boys wanted basketball, then it was volleyball, then it was so we had boys basketball, girls basketball, then JV basketball, and then I'm trying to even think, volleyball. Soccer. Thank you. And then with COVID, when COVID hit, when COVID hit, I just wanted to say, when COVID hit, I just thought that was so terrible for the kids. I felt for the kids. I mean, these kids that just wanted to play sports, and we were limited. So I'm a runner in my adult life. So I've always wanted to do a runner's club. And I was like, you know what? That has nothing to do with wearing masks or social distancing. So we went onto the rail trail and we started a runners club. I think we did 3 sessions last year. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous, but anyway, it went really well. So now this year we're trying to see if we can get high school soccer going, and we have a Saturday soccer league that's starting. Okay, so I wanted to just give you guys my website. It's dchsports.org. And if you go on there, you'll see that. We are a Christian organization. However, you don't need to be a Christian to join the team. All you need to be is homeschooled. But for the little kids, the Saturday League, we open it up to everybody. Public school, doesn't matter. We open up to everybody. You do not need to be homeschooled. The high school teams, you do need to be homeschooled. Because that we're competing as a homeschool team. So that's basically, I'm just going to read my about page. It's not that long. It just says Dutchess County Homeschool Sports is a nonprofit youth sports ministry that has been serving the homeschool community of the Hudson Valley since 2010. DCH was initially formed to serve the sports needs of the homeschool families in Dutchess County. However, in 2014, we expanded to include year-round sports opportunities, not just for homeschoolers, but for students of the Hudson Valley region. And you can go on there and you could read more about it. So if you're looking don't think that because, my kid's an athlete and they're not going to have sports. There are sports opportunities out there. You can do town leagues. I know that's an opportunity. But, there's also DCH. I think we're the only thing around here with sports, right? I think so, pretty much. And yeah, that's it. So I'll be downstairs too. I would strongly encourage, like I said, I'm a homeschool mom, or was formerly. I am actually a resource also. I've had people contact me about homeschooling too and questions. I will share quarterly reports with you. I've done it with other families. I'm from the Wappinger School District also. I found it very friendly, homeschool friendly. I got to know the people in the offices. I thought that was a good thing, just as a Christian, just to get to know people. They're not these, don't be afraid of the school district. I just looked at it as an opportunity to get to know the people. And also I would say join HSLDA. That should really be your first thing. That's me personally. That's a great resource for us homeschoolers. Anyway, so that's it. So that's it with DCH. So if you have any questions, you can meet me downstairs.
So we've mentioned HSLDA several times. It makes it simple because if there's a problem, you contact them, they write the letter, and you breathe easy. Sharon, you made it. Come on up. Explain what you got, who you are, what you're doing, what your support group does.
I can do that in 2 minutes or 2 hours, so I just... So I'm from Classical Conversations of Wappingers Falls, and our motto is to know God and to make him known. We do that through the 3 C's of Classical Conversations, which is classical, Christian, and community. We are primarily a classical education group. We do follow the trivium. We do study classical art and classical music and classical literature. We want to study things that will promote the growth of virtue, and we know this because they have withstood the test of time. So that's why we focus on that. We are primarily a Christ-centered community. Our curriculum does revolve around a biblical worldview. Sorry, flashing lights really distracting. We do have like apologetics and theology in our challenge programs for the older children. And finally, we really are very community focused because homeschooling is really hard. I don't suggest you do it in isolation, and so it's particularly nice to be surrounded by people who are in the same path as you, like-minded people, and who are following the same journey and following the same goals and footsteps. And so God has really blessed us with a great community. Everybody gets along really well, and the kids play together at lunch. We have lunch hour together. The moms fellowship. We help each other with questions or struggles. And this is going to be our 5th year. It's really amazing. We're growing. I have a lot of programs and opportunities. So come visit my booth downstairs, and I'll tell you more. Thanks.
The church, it's not surprising they're mentioning a lot of Christian organizations. There are a lot of other homeschool support groups, other religions and secular ones. They are out there, but of course, we're just promoting what we know. Classical Conversations actually meets here. Our church is very friendly. We want to support that. They meet here on Tuesdays. You've got a Constitutional Warriors or something like that coming up on, has I got the right name? Legal Warriors Constitutional Course. Okay.
Yeah, we're tabling it.
You're tabling it.
Yeah, sorry, Pastor Harris. I haven't had a chance.
Ah, okay.
We're working on it though. This is our teacher right here.
Fantastic. All right. So at some point you'll do it again. We were going to have that on Thursday, but we'll wait. Okay. And the first Friday of every month we give blood here, and they really need it. So I'm going to plug that too. Come give blood. It's easier than some other things you might have to do. So we're going to break. We'll let you go downstairs. There are other, again, folks down there. But if I can just kind of leave this. If you're new to homeschooling, or it's just kind of, I'm not sure, I hope we encourage you tonight. It's very doable. You talk to some of these moms who've been doing it, and you're going to be very encouraged. You're never going to be alone unless you want to be alone. And some of these homeschool moms are not going to let you be alone, so they're probably going to encourage you. It is a community that is widespread. They want to help you. I know, Kara, you said you had like 140 responses just for what we've done. Rosie, I talked to her the other day, is constantly getting calls. I think Teresa, you are too. We want to help you, so you can do it. And I would encourage you to do it for the sake of your children and actually really for the sake of our society. As a pastor, I have to admit, I'm very concerned about where we're going as a society, and a lot of it has to do with what they're coming out in educationally. Our kids aren't coming out able to function anymore. And it starts showing up, you go to a store and they can't count. You try and hire someone, they can't function. Your kids don't have to be in that. They can function, they can count, they can be successful in life, regardless of anything that happens in society. You can do that through homeschooling. So, yes?
I just forgot one thing. I don't know if this was mentioned before. I have children with special needs, and I get these services outside of the school district, so if anybody wants help with that.
Okay. For the recording, so Sharon is inviting, if you have special needs children, talk to her. She's very good at that. She knows the resources. Okay. Let's go on downstairs. I think they have some refreshments down there as well. Thank you so much for coming.